We left off, we were talking about women in the industry, and this is
Right.
probably a really good time to talk about your association with women in film,
Right.
and the founding of it.
Yes. Well, when I was at Fox, a woman came to me named Sue Cameron, who used to work for The Hollywood Reporter, and T.G. Wilkinson Miles, what was her full name, who was the editor and owner of The Hollywood Reporter, had said to Sue, we ought to do some stories about women in the business and on. And Sue found that it all started with the Writers Guild, actually, that there was a real disparity happening out there with the number of women writers versus the number of men writers. And she wrote a column about it, and it caused a bit of a sensation. And she came to me and she said, look, Sue came to me and she says, look, I think we ought to meet with Tichy, and we ought to talk about what we can do about having a bigger profile in the industry. So I went over to Tichy's office, and Sue was there with, I think, 6 other women. One was a woman from a PR firm, another was a writer, and another was a lawyer, and a couple of other people who didn't stay with it. And it came out that we would start an organization called Women in Film, meaning television, whatever, broadcasting. And what we would do is we would meet and we would try to entertain the aspects of promoting women for positions that they had not necessarily been thought of in the business. And so it evolved then to be a very interesting organization because the support factor was really what it was about in the beginning. It's changed somewhat now to be less supportive, I think, and more class-oriented and benefiting people who are looking to learn about various aspects, and they have breakfasts and luncheons and that sort of thing. And so we called a bunch of our friends, and everybody had an assignment to call and bring in as many people as you could, 5 people, 10 people, whatever. And then we started to have meetings at the Hollywood Reporter downstairs when the office was closed, so we had more room. Well, it was though you said free money. I mean, people just came from everywhere saying, thank God we have a place to go and vent because we can't get work. We're just as good as, and so on and so on. And it really was a saving grace, really, for a lot of people who then in turn met other people who then in turn could help move them on. So it was a very important organization, and it still is. Oh, it's 30-some-odd years old. I can't believe that, but it is. And it has grown, and it has struggled, and it has changed its personality, and it's been reflective, and it's been less than I had hoped it would be, and sometimes more than I hoped it would be. And I still keep my hand into some of it. I established the Nancy Malone Director Award, cash award, for a young woman director or an old woman director who comes out of what we call the Film Finishing Fund, which is a pot of money or in-kind services for those women who have made either a documentary and or a narrative film who need finishing, either one more pass at the editing machine or some kind of help with a voiceover or whatever it is. And the person who wins that, there are many, many submissions, but the person who wins both the doc and the fiction film is given a cash award from me to encourage them. Go buy dinner, or put it in your film. It doesn't matter. So I also established the Dorothy Osner Award for Women in Film, which was, curiously enough, given to Catherine Bigelow many, many years ago. I was the chair of the Crystal Award one year, and I had a dais of great women directors. Not too many people have heard of. Catherine was one of them. Martha's, oh gosh, I can't remember some of them. Nancy Schreiber, a few really terrific girls. I asked Barbara Streisand if she would be the first recipient of the Arzner Award, which she accepted, and happily so. And I said, and then in turn around and give the Arzner Award to all the women that are on the dais, which she did, which was great. It was just wonderful. So they've kept that award, the Arzner Award, not every year, much to my chagrin, but I hollered and screamed this year and said, God, Catherine, big old one, and you're not having an award this year? How stupid is that? So they've installed it, thank God, again, and they're giving it to a woman director this year again. So I'm pleased about that. But it was a good organization, and when I was at Fox, I established a thing called the 20th Century Fox Women's Council. And just to give you an example of how great some of these men were, I went to Dennis's office, Dennis Stanfield, the CEO, president of 20th Century Fox, and I said, Mr. Stanfield, you've got a lot of women working in capacities that maybe they're not so happy about being in, and maybe we could do something about encouraging them to think that there's other things that they can do other than being clerks and secretaries. And he says, well, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I'd like to establish a thing called the 20th Century Fox Women's Council, and I'd like to bring in speakers, and I'd like to have the permission to invite women who are the secretaries to the head of production and whatever, to come and just learn some other aspects of what life could be if they wanted to have it. Well, he said, that's an odd thing. He said, do you think the bosses are going to, particularly like that? And I said, well, we can only try. He said, okay, go ahead. And I said, and by the way, could I have $5,000 to start it? And by the way, I'm out the door. He said, what? I said, well, I sort of need money to get it going, without hesitation. Without hesitation. He said, the check will be on your desk as soon as you get back to your office. That was Dennis Stanfield. Pretty great guy. Pretty great. And my boss, Cy Salkowitz, was equally as supportive. He said, anytime you want to use my office or you want to have the people come in, and I'll speak to the girls or the women. And I said, great. So Alan Alda came and spoke, and it was just terrific. Just terrific. And a lot of women said that, gee, I never thought I could do anything else but, be a secretary. But now I think there's other things for me to do.
Did you see any of them raise
Yeah,
their hands up?
I did. It was great. What some of them did, they went back to their bosses and said, you know something? I'd like to be called your assistant. And they went, what? And they said, yeah, and you could give me extra things to do that I could, actually broaden my horizons.
As opposed to a secretary.
Mm-hmm. And so a lot of them did. A lot of them said, I don't care what I'm called. So, it just gave a person an alternative. That's all. And that was great.
Now, you said that women really didn't help you a lot through your career. Have you seen it get any better as the years have gone on now that with women rising more into positions of power? Well,
what I've observed, kind of, and which is, I don't know, it goes back maybe to high school, which I never attended, but, where there are clique girls, and not like mean girls, but, cliquey. And I think some of those cliquey executive types stay within their own territory. And I think a lot of outside women who want to achieve something have a hard time breaking through. I know it goes with the male part of our business as well, but somehow I've always found that the guys have been more helpful to me. They've just been more patient, more willing to put a hand out than the women, with the exception of Esther Shapiro, of course, and the women on Star Trek. The producers on Star Trek were women, and they were wonderful. But for the most part, I haven't worked with a lot of women. But I hear stories from other people who say, geez, women don't help other women, do they? They really don't. I mean, there's an awful lot of movies that go on, you know, with some of the people at DreamWorks can make decisions about hiring directors, and at Sony's, you know, big executive there who's a woman. I don't see them hiring women directors. I don't. And, you know, I think everybody wants the opportunity to say, no, it's not right for me. Well, we do a lot of action adventure and, you know, guy movies and blah, blah, blah. Well, I think Catherine Bigelow can do a guy movie. I think she did. And I think certainly Mimi Leder can do a guy movie. I think people just want to have the opportunity to say, it's not right for me. Or, no, I can't, I don't want to do that. But they're not given the offer. So, you know, what do we learn from that? It's just that the women in the executive seats don't trust them or something. And that's in its own form a bit of prejudice and not healthy. I mean, I'm not in the film business, but I think Catherine Bigelow's picture is a masterpiece. I think what she did in terms of getting to the male psyche in an affectionate and real way and touching way was just magnificent. And, you know, there's a lot of women out there who can do good pictures like that, if given the chance.
Do you consider yourself a pioneer in the sense of women?
Yeah, I always think it's an old television set, but didn't they make Pioneer TVs once years ago? But yeah, I suppose one could say that. I mean, if I say it, it sounds arrogant. But I suppose doing first things makes you kind of that word. So I'm humbled by the thought.
But did you think about it at the time too, or
Oh no,
you just...
no. I'm just doing my job, you know? Whatever that is, this moment.
What are your current projects now?
Well, I'm struggling. I have a wonderful Irish picture, and of course, there's no money out there to get any money unless it's a studio, and studios are not making, you know, pictures like this. They make tentpole movies, you know, with millions and millions of dollars. But this is a very touching story about a mother and a son, a little boy, and about the environment and how we're killing the environment. Hello, witness the oil spill. And this takes place here and in Ireland, where they're doing their job to ruin the environment as well. And this is the story of how this little boy saves the day. Won't let these people come in and drill in a very special part of Ireland. But it's applicable to the world. So I've had very good answers, and people have said, gee, this is a good story. But nobody's coughed up the money yet. So I'll take it under my arm and go around and see what happens.
How has the industry changed since you started?
It's mean.
Way back?
It's meaner. Those old men that started this business from, you know, Russia and God knows where from, had a certain respect and started, you know, the kind of movies that they loved. I mean, can you imagine going in and pitching Wuthering Heights today? But they also made commercial pictures too. But there was an intelligence and a respect for each other as well as the product that they put out. That people are mean today. They're small. They're just mean. And I mean, that's the overall impression. I don't mean to categorize everybody in the same way, but oftentimes I'm talking to people and they go, God, it's so mean out there. I mean, those guys were strong. They were tough. They didn't take anything for granted. But they didn't have a meanness about them. Everything that I've read, I didn't know these people personally, but everything that I've read says, you know, they were tough. They were killers, but they weren't mean. And that's what's out there today. People are rude. There's no such thing as returning a call. There's no such thing as manners. There's no such thing as real compassion for projects and for people. It's like, how can I get it done quick, fast, and for cheap? And, you know, it's. I think it reflects terribly on a society. I think, you know, kids growing up today don't, I mean, while it's all internet stuff and everybody's on a wireless this and, you know, an iPad and everything else, you know, I see a kind of civility disappearing. And maybe because, you know, I'm not their age and that's what it is today and all of that stuff, but there is an uncomfortableness for me about how people treat people today. It doesn't make me comfortable. It makes me sad, and it makes me feel, God, what a shame these kids are not having this opportunity to enjoy the nature of another human being. But that's what the nature of life is, I guess. You know, move on. We're not moving on better. We're moving on intelligently in some aspects, but not better humanely. And that's my opinion.
What do you think has been the high point of your career?
Surviving it would be a good answer, I think. A high point. A high point of my career has been that I got through it with grace.
That's a good answer. Any regrets in your career?
I don't think so. I don't think I have regrets. I've been blessed with great friends, and I'm very happy to move into the next stage of my life.
I'm going to ask you this question 3 times because you have 3 different careers. What advice would you give to an aspiring actress?
Study, God, please, and study with a good teacher, not some fly-by-night that has a sign in a window. But seek out the best possible teachers and go, and if you don't like the class and it doesn't feel right to you, leave it. Don't stay in. I used to, go to Saturday morning classes at Milton Katselas's after Stella died, of course, just to keep brushing up, just to keep learning and learning and learning. And sadly, Milton passed away, and I don't know who to recommend anymore. I haven't talked to any of my young actor friends to find out who they're studying. I don't think there's too many out there that's really, really great. If you know of a great director that's teaching, I'd find that. But I don't know any acting teachers right now.
And what advice would you give to an aspiring executive?
I'll tell you the phone call story. I'm sitting in my office at Fox one night, 8 o'clock, and I'm returning all of my phone calls. Now, I know the people aren't there. I know they're gone for the day or whatever. But I want it on their phone machine, or I want whoever's answering their phone to say Nancy called, or Nancy returned your call, whatever. I'm exhausted. It's been a full day. The phone rings. I pick the phone up. It's 8 o'clock. Right? And it's a man named Irwin Siegelstein, who was the president of NBC in New York, returning his calls. In New York, returning his calls. 11 o'clock at night. These people don't return calls. It's either considered chic, or it's considered a behavior pattern that's tough, or I don't know what it is. To me, it's just bad manners. But people do not return calls. And when that horror occurred, I don't know. When that wave of bad behavior happened, I don't know. But it's certainly not something I find attractive. That's what I would tell an executive. Pay attention to the people who are coming in, give them respect, and return the call. Real easy.
And advice to aspiring directors?
Study every old film you possibly can. Silence and the early talkies, all the way through the 40s. Go right past Star Wars, because we all know what that's about, and find some wonderful. I mean, there's great European directors. Study them. Bergman, I knew every shot in every Bergman film. Fellini, I mean, eat Fellini. Just desire him and eat him alive. He's so brilliant. And I mean, La Strada. How can you top La Strada? It's one of the great movies ever. And study every minute. You know, don't waste your time on a lot of garbage. Even though a lot of garbage is what's being done today, try to improve the garbage. Try to make it better. You know, just don't come in and do it because it's the gig. You know, make it better. Be imaginative. You know, come up with stuff, you know, that's exciting and different. So that somebody who may have a brain in their head that's watching dailies will go, whoa, hey, that's good. That's interesting. So study and learn and watch and observe. Stella used to have an exercise for young actors. We go into a supermarket, and one person stands at the front of the produce department. The other person goes around the entire produce department, around the circle, with oranges and peaches and lemons and bananas, whatever. And as they finish making the circle around the produce department, the first person who's standing by says, "Tell me what you saw." And then tell me where they were next to each other. Now, if you learn how to do that, you learn how to observe what's out there. You don't take anything for granted. It's an exercise that trains your brain and trains your eyes. Watch everything. Look at everything. Steal everything. You know, that's what a good director can do.
That's great. And our last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I have 8 million jokes for that one, but I'll try to be good. I'll try to behave myself. I'll be a switch. How would I like to be remembered? About 5'9" and very thin. But since I don't think I can pull that off, let's see. How would I like to be remembered? I'd like to be remembered as somebody who is thoughtful and who is kind and who is talented and who is caring and who is dedicated to the job at hand. And being compassionate is one of my most favorite words in the dictionary. And it's a word that I like to apply to my life and myself. And I think I haven't struck out all the time, but sometimes I haven't been as thoughtful. But a lot of times I haven't been as thoughtful. But I try to keep that in mind as something that I find a virtue that's important to my style. And I'd like to be remembered with a sense of humor and as someone who loves their friends.
Thank you, Nancy. It was lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.